The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive bowl carved from black stone. Thousands of seats rose in curved rows around the central speaking platform where Admiral Jake Morrison stood alone. His blue uniform looked simple. Compared to the colorful robes and strange armor worn by the alien delegates who filled the chamber, Morrison had been to this place many times before, but today felt different. The air buzzed with tension and whispered conversations in dozens of languages. Some sounds were clicks and hisses, while others were musical tones that hurt human ears. The smell of different atmospheres mixed together, creating a sharp metallic taste in his mouth. The Zentari delegate rose from his seat in the front row. His insect-like body stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. His compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like broken mirrors as he spoke in his clicking language. The translation device in Morrison's ear turned the clicks into words. "The humans have become too dangerous for our peaceful galaxy," the Zentari said. "They build weapons that could destroy entire moons. They expand into space without asking permission from anyone. They solve problems with violence instead of talking." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Morrison kept his face calm, but his hands tightened into fists at his sides. Behind him in the observation deck, he could see Captain Lisa, Hayes, and other human diplomats watching with worried expressions. A Vorthic ambassador slithered forward on her snake-like body. Her scales were deep purple, and her yellow eyes glowed in the dim light. "The humans terraform worlds without caring about the life already there," she hissed. "They change entire planets to suit themselves. They think they own whatever they touch." More voices joined in from around the chamber. The Korthians were large gray beings with thick skin like elephant hide. Their representative slammed his massive fist on his desk, making a sound like thunder. "Human colonies grow too fast," he rumbled. "They take resources that should be shared with everyone. They make other species look weak." Morrison finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. "We have followed every treaty we signed. We have helped defend this galaxy from threats you could not handle alone. We have shared our technology and our knowledge freely." The ethereal collective's representative floated forward. It looked like a cloud of blue, light held inside a crystal container. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The humans are too aggressive. They ask for forgiveness instead of permission. They change things too quickly. They make the galaxy unstable. We make the galaxy safer," Morrison replied. "When the Zarian plague broke out, we created the cure. When pirates attacked trade routes, we cleared them out. When the Kronos system was hit by asteroids, we moved 2 billion people to safety." The Zentari delegate clicked his mandibles, and what humans had learned was a sign of dismissal. "The humans think they are heroes, but they are conquerors. They build military bases on worlds they claim to protect. They create new weapons every year. They scare other species with their rapid growth." Dr. Amanda Wells stood up in the observation deck. She was head of the Human Diplomatic Science team and had worked with aliens for over 20 years. Her voice was calm but firm. "Everything we have done has been approved by this council. Every colony was established with proper permits. Every weapon system was registered according to galactic law." The Vorthic ambassador turned her yellow eyes toward Wells. "Laws can be changed when they no longer serve the greater good? The humans have shown they cannot be trusted with unlimited freedom." Morrison felt anger building in his chest but kept his voice steady. "What exactly are you accusing us of?" "Nothing illegal," admitted the Korthian representative. "But legality is not the same as wisdom. The humans grow too powerful too quickly. They will eventually dominate all other species if we do not act now." The debate continued for 3 hours. One by one, representatives from different species stood to voice their concerns about humanity. The Altarians worried about human military expansion. The Delphinians feared human terraforming technology. The Christic claimed human trade practices were too aggressive. Morrison listened to each complaint with growing disbelief. These were the same species that had begged for human help when disasters struck their worlds. The same aliens who had celebrated when human scientists solved problems they had struggled with for centuries. The same civilizations that had welcomed human protection when dangerous threats emerged from deep space. Finally, the Centauri delegate called for order. We have heard enough testimony. The question before this council is simple. Should humanity continue to be a member of the Galactic Council with full rights and privileges? The vote was swift and brutal. The giant display screen above the chamber showed the results in glowing numbers. 847 votes for expulsion. 12 abstentions. Only 3 votes against. The Altarians and 2 small mining colonies had voted to keep humanity in the council. Morrison stood in the center of the chamber as the results sank in. 50 years of human membership in the Galactic Council had just ended. 50 years of cooperation and shared progress had been thrown away because other species feared human success. The Centauri delegates' compound eyes glittered with satisfaction. The motion passes. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council effective immediately. All human vessels must leave Council space within 6 months. All human colonies outside the Sol system must be abandoned or transferred to other species. Morrison activated his communicator with a steady hand. His voice was cold and professional as he spoke to the human fleet commanders waiting in orbit above the Council world. This is Admiral Morrison to all human vessels and colonies. We are no longer welcome here. Begin immediate preparations for departure. We are going home. The chamber erupted in conversation as aliens discussed the vote and its consequences. Some seemed pleased while others looked worried about what they had just done. Morrison walked toward the exit without looking back at the beings who had just cast out the species that had protected them for half a century. Lisa Hayes met him at the chamber doors. Her face was tight with controlled anger. Sir, what are our orders? Morrison looked back once at the Galactic Council chamber where aliens were already discussing how to divide up former human territories. We leave. We take everything with us. Every piece of technology, every bit of knowledge, every weapon and tool and medical device. If they do not want us here, then they will have to survive without us. And if they ask for help later? Morrison's expression was harder than stone. Then they will learn what the galaxy is like without humans to protect it. 3 months had passed since the vote that changed everything. Captain Roy Bennett stood on the observation deck of the transport ship looking down at New Terra through the thick glass. The planet had been humanity's crown jewel outside the Sol system with its blue oceans and green continents that reminded everyone of Earth. Now the evacuation was almost complete. Massive cargo ships filled the sky like metal clouds carrying away everything humans had built over 30 years. The agricultural domes that had turned barren ground into fertile farmland were being carefully taken apart piece by piece. The fusion reactors that powered the cities were being shut down and loaded onto transport vessels. Lieutenant Karen Price walked up beside Bennett with a datapad in her hands. Her face showed the exhaustion that all humans felt after months of constant work. Sir, the Centauri are requesting we leave behind the atmospheric processors. They say the machines could help them colonize the planet faster. Bennett turned away from the window with a hard expression. Strip them down to bare metal. Every circuit board, every power cell, every bolt and wire. If they wanted our technology, they should have voted differently. Price nodded and walked away to relay the orders. Bennett looked back at the planet. One more time. The cities below were already going dark as power systems were removed. Streets that had been filled with human families now stood empty and quiet. Parks where children had played were being torn up as the soil treatment. Systems were carefully extracted. The evacuation was happening across the entire galaxy. On the mining world of Kara 7, Chief Engineer Danny Clark supervised the removal of the massive extraction equipment that had pulled rare metals from deep underground. The automated systems had worked perfectly for 20 years, providing materials to dozens of alien species. How long before the mines flood without our drainage systems? Asked technician Julie Morgan as she watched the pumps being loaded onto cargo ships. Clark checked his readings and shook his head. Maybe 3 weeks? The rock formations are unstable without constant water removal. The whole operation will collapse. Morgan looked confused. Should we warn the Zentari? They are planning to take over the mines next month. Not our problem anymore, Clark replied. They made their choice. Now they live with the consequences. The same scene played out on hundreds of worlds. Human colonies that had taken decades to build were being emptied in a matter of months. The aliens had expected humans to leave behind most of their infrastructure, thinking it would be too expensive to move. They were wrong. Humans had always been good at moving things. Their ancestors had crossed oceans and continents carrying everything they owned. Now they crossed space doing the same thing. Nothing useful was left behind. Every tool that made life easier was packed up and shipped home. Every machine that made work possible was carefully removed. The alien species watched with growing concern as they realized the scope of what was happening. The Vorthak had quickly claimed several former human agricultural worlds, but found empty domes and barren soil. The atmospheric processors that had created breathable air were gone. The soil treatment systems that had made plants grow were removed. Even the weather control satellites had been pulled from orbit. On the trade station at Nexus Point, Commander Nina Foster monitored the galactic communication networks. Her job was to track what the aliens were saying about the human exodus. The messages she intercepted were becoming more worried each day. Admiral Morris and the Zentari are having problems with the farming equipment on New Terra, she reported. They cannot figure out how to restart the atmospheric processors. They are asking for technical manuals. Morrison was aboard the flagship. Heading back toward Earth, his cabin was filled with reports from evacuation commanders across the galaxy. Every day brought new requests from aliens who had discovered they could not operate human technology without human expertise. No response, Morrison said without looking up from his papers. We are going dark. No communication with any non-human species, no technical support, no emergency assistance, nothing. Foster nodded but looked uncomfortable. Sir, some of the requests are for medical emergencies. The hospital on Sanctuary cannot operate their quantum scanners without human technicians. Morrison finally looked up with cold eyes. They voted us out. They said we were too dangerous to be part of their civilization. Now they can save their own people with their own technology. The communication blackout was total. Every human frequency went silent. Diplomatic channels that had carried messages between species for 50 years suddenly carried nothing but static. The aliens tried sending messages to human colonies but received no replies. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. The effects began to show quickly. Trade routes that had been protected by human patrol ships became dangerous as pirates moved in. The heavily armed human vessels had kept the shipping lanes safe for decades. Without them, merchant ships began to disappear. Space stations that had been built with human engineering started having problems. The fusion reactors needed constant maintenance that only human technicians understood. The gravity generators required adjustments that only human scientists could make. The life support systems began failing without human oversight. On the former human world of Kepler Station, the Korthian military tried to operate the defense systems, the massive shield generators that had protected the station from asteroids and enemy attacks were too complex for them to understand. Within weeks, the station was hit by space debris that would have been easily deflected before. The Ethereal Collective attempted to take over the research facilities on Luna Base. The quantum laboratories had been conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of known science. But without human researchers, the equipment was just expensive decoration. Experiments that had been running for years were shut down and lost forever. Back on Earth, President Helen Ross met with her cabinet to discuss the situation. The reports from evacuated colonies painted a picture of alien civilizations struggling to maintain what humans had built. Some advisors suggested offering limited assistance to prevent humanitarian disasters. They made their choice, Ross said firmly. They decided we were too dangerous to be part of their galaxy. Now they can prove they were right by handling these problems themselves. The evacuation continued with mechanical precision. Every human colony was stripped clean and abandoned. Every space station was emptied and left dark. Every trade post was closed and sealed. The galaxy was getting exactly what it had voted for, a future without human involvement. The last human transport. Ship left New Terra on a Tuesday. Captain Bennett watched from the bridge as the planet fell away behind them. The cities below were already going dark as automated systems shut down without human oversight. The beautiful world that had been a symbol of human achievement was now just another empty planet waiting for new owners. "Set course for Earth," Bennett ordered. "We are going home." The ship turned toward the distant Sol system, carrying the last humans away from the galaxy that had rejected them. Behind them, they left a civilization that was about to learn what life was like without the species they had called too dangerous to keep around. 6 months after the humans had vanished from the galaxy, the first major crisis hit the Nexus trade route. The shipping lane connected the wealthy core worlds to the resource-rich outer rim territories through a dangerous region of space filled with asteroids and dead planets where pirates had always hidden. Senator Beth Coleman stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council holding a datapad filled with bad news. Her Altarian species had been one of the few to vote against human expulsion, and now she felt sick watching the consequences unfold. 17 major shipping companies have suspended all operations along the Nexus route, she announced to the half-empty chamber. The Korthian Empire has lost 12 cargo vessels in the past month alone. The Vorthak Trade Confederation is reporting similar losses. The Zentari delegate clicked his mandibles in frustration. His compound eyes reflected the council chamber lights as he spoke. "Where are the defense fleets? Who is protecting our merchant ships?" Coleman felt anger rise in her chest. The humans were protecting them. The human patrol ships kept the pirates away for 30 years. Now those ships are gone. The Korthian representative General Throck slammed his massive fist on his desk. "We have our own military forces. We do not need human protection." "Then why are your cargo ships being destroyed?" Coleman asked. "Why are your trade routes failing?" The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The human patrol fleets had been small and scattered, but they had been everywhere. Their fast ships and advanced weapons had made piracy too dangerous to attempt. Pirates had learned to avoid any system where humans might be watching. Now the pirates were back and they were bolder than ever. The alien military forces were designed to fight large battles against other organized fleets. They were not good at chasing small fast ships through asteroid fields and nebula clouds where pirates like to hide. On the former human world of Sanctuary, Dr. Zefter floated anxiously around the medical facility that had once been the galaxy's most advanced hospital. The Ethereal Collective had taken over the facility, hoping to continue the important medical research that had saved millions of lives, but everything was going wrong. The quantum medical scanners that could see inside a patient's body at the cellular level were shutting down one by one. The resonance frequencies that made them work required constant adjustment by technicians who understood human quantum physics. "The equipment is failing," reported his assistant Dr. Nelvara. "Without the human technicians, we cannot maintain the calibration systems." Dr. Zefter's energy form flickered with worry. "Contact the human government. Offer them payment for technical support. We have tried. There is no response." The humans have gone completely silent. The medical facility that had treated patients from across the galaxy was slowly becoming useless. The advanced surgical robots required human-designed software updates. The genetic therapy chambers needed human-engineered biological components. The research laboratories were filled with experiments that only human scientists understood. Similar problems were spreading across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire was facing civil war as their newly claimed territories became economic disasters. The agricultural worlds they had seized from humans were producing no food. The atmospheric processors that made the planets habitable had failed without human maintenance. Commander Lisa Hayes aboard the human vessel Defiance monitored the galactic news feeds from her position near the edge of the Sol system. The reports painted a picture of increasing chaos, and she felt no satisfaction in being right about the consequences. Admiral Morrison, the Zentari have had 3 separate civil wars break out in former human territories, she reported. Their military forces are spread too thin to maintain order. Morrison looked up from his desk where he was reviewing Earth's defense preparations. Let them fight. They wanted to prove they could handle galactic civilization without us. The Corthians are facing food shortages on their mining worlds. The agricultural support systems we built are failing without maintenance. Not our problem anymore. The mining world of Kara 7 had flooded exactly as Chief Engineer Danny Clark had predicted. The complex drainage systems that had kept the deep mines operational required constant monitoring and adjustment. The Zentari workers who had taken over the operation had no idea how to maintain the pumps and filters. Within 3 months, the mines were completely underwater. The rare metals that had supplied half the galaxy's manufacturing needs were now unreachable. The Zentari had lost billions of credits worth of equipment and had to abandon the world entirely. The same pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Human-built infrastructure was failing without human expertise. The aliens had assumed that technology could operate itself once it was built. They were learning the hard way that advanced systems required advanced knowledge to maintain. The galactic economy began to collapse. Supply chains that had functioned smoothly for decades were breaking down. The rare minerals from Kara 7 were no longer available. The medical supplies from Sanctuary were running out. The food from agricultural worlds was rotting in storage because the preservation systems had failed. Trade disputes that had been settled by human diplomats were escalating into armed conflicts. The humans had been neutral mediators who could find solutions that satisfied everyone. Without them, small disagreements became major wars. The Delphinian system erupted into violence when the Corthians accused them of stealing water rights to a nebula cloud. The dispute would have been resolved in days with human mediation. Instead, it became a shooting war that lasted months and killed thousands of beings. President Helen Ross received daily reports about the galactic situation from her intelligence services. The picture was clear. The galaxy was falling apart without human involvement. Some of her advisors suggested offering limited assistance to prevent complete collapse. They made their choice, Ross said firmly. They said we were too dangerous to be part of their civilization. Now they can prove they were strong enough to survive without us. The isolation was complete and absolute. Human communication frequencies remained silent. Human patrol ships stayed within the Sol system. Human diplomats ignored all contact attempts. The galaxy had wanted to be free of human influence, and now it was getting exactly what it had asked for. The alien species were beginning to understand what they had lost. The humans had not just been another member of the galactic community. They had been the engineers who built the infrastructure, the doctors who provided the medical care, the soldiers who maintained the peace, the diplomats who prevented wars. Without them, the galaxy was discovering that it could not function. A carefully balanced system that had maintained peace and prosperity for centuries was crumbling. The aliens had thought they were voting out a dangerous species. Instead, they had voted out the foundation that held their civilization together. The realization was spreading through the galactic community like a plague. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had made themselves indispensable through competence. Now that they were gone, the true cost of their expulsion was becoming clear. The galaxy was learning to regret its decision, but the humans were not listening anymore. 1 year after humanity's expulsion, the galaxy was in complete chaos. President Victor Kane of the Altarian Republic stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. In a chamber that was now more empty than full, many species had withdrawn from galactic politics, entirely focusing on their own survival as their civilizations crumbled. "We must reach out to the humans," Kane declared, his voice echoing through the half-empty chamber. "The evidence is overwhelming. Without their contributions, our civilization is collapsing." The Corthian representative, General Throck, pounded his armored fist on the table with a sound like thunder. "The humans abandoned us. They left us to die in the chaos they created by leaving. Kane turned to face the massive gray alien with barely controlled anger. We abandoned them first. We voted them out of this council. We told them they were unwelcome in our galaxy. Now we are paying the price for our stupidity. The Vorthic Empire had collapsed completely. Their serpentine leaders had been overthrown by desperate populations who could no longer survive on worlds that had been terraformed by human technology. Without human maintenance, the atmospheric processors had failed, leaving billions of Vorthek gasping for breath on planets that could no longer support their species. The first attempts to contact humanity were humiliating failures. The aliens sent diplomatic vessels toward the Sol system, but they were turned away by automated defense platforms that spoke in cold mechanical voices. The humans had created an impenetrable barrier around their home system that no alien ship could pass. "This is Sol Defense Network," the automated message repeated to every alien vessel that approached. "This system is closed to non-human traffic. Any vessel that does not immediately reverse course will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply." The aliens tried sending messages through every communication channel they could find, but received only silence in return. The humans had cut themselves off from the galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. Every frequency that had once carried human voices now carried nothing but empty static. Ambassador Claire Thompson monitored the galactic situation from her hidden facility on Europa. She had been the last human diplomat to leave the galactic capital, and now she watched the aliens' desperate attempts to restore contact. Her reports to Earth's government painted a picture of complete civilizational breakdown. "The Outer Rim territories are now controlled by pirates and warlords," she reported to President Helen Ross. "The Zentari have lost 60% of their fleet trying to maintain order. The Corthians are requesting emergency food aid from anyone who will listen." President Ross sat in her office on Earth, surrounded by reports from across the galaxy. She had been a military commander before becoming president and had opposed humanity's withdrawal from the start. Now she faced the most difficult decision of her career. "What is the current sentiment among our population?" she asked. Thompson's image flickered on the communication screen. "Mixed. Some people want to help the aliens. Others say we should let them burn for what they did to us. The military leadership is largely in favor of continued isolation. The galaxy's problems were getting worse every day. The Great Plague of Zarian had broken out across 17 star systems. The disease had been contained for centuries by human medical technology and research. Without human scientists and their advanced medical facilities, the plague was spreading unchecked. Dr. Amanda Wells, now serving as Earth Secretary of Science, reviewed the plague reports with growing concern. The disease was mutating faster than alien medical systems could track it. Human research stations had been monitoring the plague for decades, keeping it under control with carefully designed treatments. "The plague will reach Earth eventually if it spreads far enough," Wells warned. During a cabinet meeting, "We developed the original containment protocols. We know how dangerous this disease can be." The aliens were dying by the millions. Their medical systems were centuries behind human technology. The quantum scanners that could identify a plague mutations in real time were all human-built and had failed without human maintenance. The genetic therapy chambers that could create new treatments were offline across the galaxy. The Zentari sent desperate messages into the void, hoping humans would respond to medical emergencies even if they ignored political requests. "We are dying," their broadcasts pleaded. "Our children are dying. Please help us." But the humans remained silent. The communication blackout was total and absolute. Every human frequency carried nothing but static. Every diplomatic channel remained empty. It was as if humanity had disappeared from the universe entirely. The galactic economy was in freefall. The rare minerals from collapsed mining operations were no longer available. The medical supplies from failed research facilities were running out. The food from ruined agricultural worlds was rotting because preservation systems had broken down without human expertise. Entire civilizations were reverting to primitive technology as their advanced systems failed. The crystalline assembly had been forced to abandon their floating cities when the antigrav generators stopped working. The ethereal collective was losing cohesion as their energy containment fields destabilized without human-designed maintenance protocols. War was breaking out across the galaxy as desperate species fought over dwindling resources. The Korthians invaded 3 Zentari systems trying to seize their agricultural worlds. The Vorthak refugees attacked anyone who refused to give them shelter. The Outer Rim territories had become a lawless wasteland where only the strongest survived. Kane stood before the Galactic Council again 3 months later. This time he was not asking for permission but demanding action. "We are facing extinction," he announced. "Not as individual species but as a galactic civilization. We need the humans back." The Zentari delegates' compound eyes were dim with exhaustion and despair. "They will not answer our calls. They have abandoned us completely." "Then we must make them listen," Kane replied. "We must offer them something they cannot refuse." The Council voted to send a direct transmission to Earth using every communication array in the galaxy. The message would be broadcast on every frequency, simultaneously making it impossible for the humans to ignore. It would be a formal apology and a plea for help from a dying civilization, but even as they prepared their desperate message, the aliens knew it might be too late. The humans had been gone for a year, and in that time the galaxy had fallen apart. The infrastructure failures had cascaded into economic collapse. The economic collapse had triggered political instability. The political instability had erupted into open warfare. The galaxy that had once been proud and prosperous was now a wasteland of failed civilizations and desperate survivors. The species that had voted to expel humanity were learning what the universe looked like without human protection. They had thought they were voting out a dangerous species that might eventually dominate them. Instead, they had voted out the Guardians, who had been protecting them all along. Now they were discovering that human dominance would have been preferable to human absence. The message to Earth was ready. Every leader of every surviving species had recorded their part of the transmission. It was a humiliating admission of failure and a desperate plea for forgiveness. But it was also their last hope for survival. The galaxy that had once rejected humanity was now begging for their return. 2 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy faced its darkest hour. The massive bioships appeared at the edge of the Andromeda system without warning, consuming entire planets in their path. The Andromedan swarm had been dormant for millennia, but something had awakened them, and now they were spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Admiral Kyle Patterson watched the emergency broadcasts from his command center on Mars. The footage showed swarm vessels, the size of moons, effortlessly defeating the combined fleets of 3 alien civilizations. The bioships seemed to absorb energy weapons and adapt to kinetic attacks within minutes of first contact. "Sir, we are receiving direct transmissions from the Galactic Council," reported Captain Julie Morrison, who was Admiral Morrison's daughter. "They are not asking for help anymore. They are begging us to return." The transmission was painful to watch. The proud alien species that had once looked down on humanity as primitive warmongers were now pleading for their lives. The Zentari delegate spoke first, his compound eyes dim with desperation and his voice breaking with emotion. "We were wrong about humanity," he said, looking directly into the camera. "We see that now. Our civilization is dying without your knowledge, your protection, and your guidance. We formally request the return of humanity to the Galactic Council with no restrictions and no conditions." The Vorthak ambassador appeared next, her serpentine form coiled in a posture that humans recognized as complete submission. "We offer total autonomy for all human territories. No limits on expansion or development. No interference in human affairs. We ask only for your aid in our darkest hour." One by one, the surviving alien leaders appeared on screen. Each species that had voted to expel humanity now begged for their return. The Korthians offered their mining worlds. The ethereal collective promised to share their energy technologies. The Altarians pledged their loyalty to human leadership. President Helen Ross convened an emergency session of the Human Congress. The debate was fierce and emotional. The footage from the Galactic broadcasts showed alien civilians dying as swarm bioships consumed their worlds. But it also showed the same species that had cast humanity out of the galaxy 2 years earlier. Senator Gary Miller represented the isolationist faction, and he argued passionately against any involvement. They called us warmongers and aggressors. When we protected them, he declared, they said we were too dangerous to be part of their civilization. Now they want us to die for them? But Dr. Amanda Wells, who now served as Secretary of Science, presented a different perspective. The swarm will not stop with the galaxy. Our intelligence shows they consume matter to build more ships. If they absorb enough resources, they will eventually reach Earth. We can fight them now with whatever allies we can gather, or face them alone later when they are 10 times stronger. The reports from the front lines were getting worse every hour. The swarm bioships seemed to learn from every battle. Weapons that worked once became useless in the next engagement. The aliens had no defense against an enemy that could adapt to their tactics in real time. The Zentari homeworld fell on a Tuesday. The planetary defense systems that had protected the insectoid species for centuries were overwhelmed in 3 hours. The swarm bioships landed on the surface and began converting the planet's biomass into more ships. Billions of Zentari died, screaming as their world was consumed. The Korthian Empire lasted slightly longer, but their end was just as brutal. Their massive military ships were absorbed by the swarm vessels and turned into new weapons. The gray-skinned aliens who had once boasted about their military strength watched helplessly as their own technology was used against them. Ross sat in her office surrounded by her closest advisors. The vote in Congress had been scheduled for the next day, but the swarm was moving faster than anyone had expected. Intelligence reports showed bioships heading toward the core worlds where most of the galaxy's population lived. "Madam President, we need to make a decision," said General Patricia Hayes, who commanded Earth's military forces. "If we are going to act, it has to be now. Every day we wait makes the swarm stronger." Ross looked at the tactical displays showing swarm movement patterns. The bioships were following predictable routes toward the most populated systems. They seemed to prefer worlds with high concentrations of organic matter. Earth with its billions of humans would be an attractive target. "What are our chances if we fight them alone?" she asked. Hayes consulted her datapad. "Unknown. We have been developing new weapons during our isolation, but we have never tested them against swarm technology. Our best estimate is that we could hold the Sol system for maybe 6 months before being overwhelmed." The decision was pragmatic rather than emotional. Ross called for an immediate vote in Congress. The debate lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Humanity would return to the galaxy, but this time they would be the leaders, not the followers. The terms were presented to the Galactic Council as non-negotiable conditions. Humanity would command all military operations against the swarm. Human colonies would have complete autonomy. Human technology would be shared only with trusted allies. Most importantly, no decision affecting human interests could be made without human approval. The aliens accepted immediately. They had no choice. The swarm was consuming worlds faster than they could evacuate them. Their military forces were being destroyed or converted into enemy weapons. Without human help, they faced complete extinction within months. Admiral Jake Morrison stood once again in the Galactic Council chambers, but everything had changed. The humans now occupied the central platform while the remaining alien species arranged themselves in respectful positions around them. The chamber was less than half full, as many civilizations had already been consumed by the swarm. "We accept your invitation to return," Morrison announced, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's new position. "But we return as the senior partners in this alliance? The mistakes of the past will not be repeated." The response was immediate and desperate. Every surviving alien leader pledged their loyalty to human command. The species that had once feared human expansion now begged for human protection. The civilizations that had called humans too aggressive now pleaded for human military leadership. Ross announced the mobilization from Earth. Human fleets that had been hidden in the outer dark began their journey back to the galaxy, the technological marvels that had been secretly developed during 2 years of isolation were revealed to the stunned aliens. The USS Valiant emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the first battle zone. The massive ship was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Its quantum-enhanced shields flickered with impossible colors. Its antimatter weapons could crack moons. Its adaptive armor could resist any known weapon. The alien observers watched in awe as the human vessel engaged a swarm bioship that had previously been considered invincible. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the bioship was nothing but floating debris and the human ship was undamaged. "What did we do to them?" whispered the Zentari delegate as he watched the tactical display. The question hung in the air like a challenge. The aliens were beginning to understand that humanity had not spent 2 years crying about their expulsion. They had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. The species that had been cast out as too dangerous had become something far more dangerous in their isolation. The galaxy had begged them to return and humanity had answered. But the price of salvation was the acknowledgement that they had always needed humanity more than humanity had needed them. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the Galactic Council chambers for the third time in his career, but now everything was different. The humans occupied the central platform while the surviving alien species sat in the outer rings like students waiting for instruction. The chamber that had once been filled with proud civilizations now held only the desperate remnants of a dying galaxy. "We accept your invitation to return," Morrison announced, his voice echoing through the half-empty hall. "But we return as the leaders of this alliance. The galaxy will be rebuilt under human guidance and human protection." The alien delegates nodded eagerly. They had no choice and everyone knew it. The swarm bioships were consuming worlds faster than they could be evacuated. Entire civilizations were being turned into raw materials for more swarm vessels. Without human intervention, they faced complete extinction within months. Admiral Lisa Hayes coordinated the massive mobilization from her flagship, the USS Defiance. Human fleets that had been hidden in the dark spaces between stars began their return journey. The ships that emerged from hyperspace were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. 2 years of isolation had given humanity time to develop weapons that seemed almost magical to the aliens. The USS Valiant led the first assault against the swarm advance forces. Captain Roy Bennett commanded the massive vessel as it engaged 3 bioships simultaneously. The aliens watched in amazement as human quantum torpedoes tore through swarm armor that had been considered impenetrable. The adaptive shields that had protected the bioships for millennia were useless against human weapons designed specifically to counter their technology. "How is this possible?" asked the Zentari delegate as he watched the tactical display. "Those bioships destroyed our entire fleet last month." Dr. Amanda Wells stood beside Morrison with a slight smile. "We have been studying swarm technology for 50 years. While you were voting us out of the galaxy, we were preparing for their return. We knew they would wake up eventually." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the 3 bioships were nothing but debris floating in space. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. The aliens realized they were watching the most advanced military force in the galaxy demonstrate its power. General Patricia Hayes led the ground forces that liberated the swarm-occupied worlds. Her soldiers wore powered armor that made them look like metal giants. Their weapons could punch through swarm bio-armor like paper. Their tactical coordination was perfect as they swept through enemy positions with devastating efficiency. The liberation of Nexus Prime took only 3 days. The Korthian world had been under swarm control for 2 months. The aliens had written off the population as lost, but the humans had other plans. Hayes led her troops through the consumed cities, fighting bioforms that had been converted from the planet's original inhabitants. "Target the nerve clusters," Hayes ordered over the communication system. "The swarm uses distributed intelligence. Cut the connections and the bioforms become helpless." The human soldiers moved through the infested city like a precision machine. They had studied swarm biology during their isolation and knew exactly how to fight them. Within hours, the bioforms were collapsing as their control networks were severed. The surviving Korthian civilians emerged from hiding to find their world being returned to them by the humans they had once expelled. The war turned in humanity's favor with shocking speed. The swarm bioships that had seemed invincible were systematically destroyed by human fleets. The bioforms that had terrorized ground forces were eliminated by human soldiers. The adaptive technology that had made the swarm so dangerous was useless against weapons designed by people who understood how it worked. Commander Nina Foster monitored the communications from her intelligence vessel. The swarm was trying to adapt to human tactics, but they were failing. Every time they modified their bioships, the humans countered with new weapons. Every time they changed their bioforms, the humans adjusted their tactics. They are learning, but we are learning faster, Foster reported to Morrison. The swarm intelligence is impressive, but it cannot match human creativity. The final battle took place at the edge of the galaxy where the swarm had established its main breeding facility. The massive biocomplex was the size of a small moon and defended by thousands of bioships. The alien leaders watched from a safe distance as the human fleet approached the seemingly impossible target. Morrison commanded the assault from the bridge of his flagship. The human vessels moved in perfect coordination using tactics that had been developed during their isolation. The swarm defenders fought desperately, but they were facing an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for decades. All ships. Fire, Morrison ordered. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously. Quantum torpedoes and antimatter beams converged on the biocomplex. The swarm facility that had seemed indestructible was torn apart in minutes. The breeding chambers exploded in chains of biological fire. The command nodes that controlled the swarm network were vaporized. The war was over. The swarm threat that had consumed dozens of worlds was eliminated. The galaxy was safe, but at a terrible cost. Entire civilizations had been destroyed. Billions of beings had died. The old galactic order was gone forever. President Helen Ross traveled to the galactic capital to address the new council. The ceremony was broadcast to every surviving world. The aliens who had once feared human expansion now celebrated human leadership. The species that had called humans too aggressive now praised human strength. "We have learned a valuable lesson," Ross said, her words carrying to every corner of the galaxy. Unity is not about everyone being the same. It is about recognizing that our differences make us stronger. Humanity will never again be cast aside for being inconvenient. We are the guardians of this galaxy now. The applause was thunderous. The aliens who had voted to expel humanity 2 years earlier now cheered their return. But everyone understood that the balance of power had shifted forever. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force, but through necessity. They had made themselves indispensable. The new galactic government was established with humans in all the key positions. Human fleets patrolled the trade routes. Human engineers rebuilt the damaged infrastructure. Human diplomats mediated disputes between species. Human scientists developed new technologies. The aliens had their worlds back, but they lived under human protection. The galaxy had begged humanity to return, and humanity had answered. But the price was the acknowledgement that they had always needed humans more than humans had needed them. Morrison stood in his office on the new galactic capital looking out at the stars. The galaxy was peaceful again, but it was a peace maintained by human strength. The species that had once rejected humanity now depended on them for survival. The humans had left without a word when they were expelled. They had returned as the undisputed masters of the galaxy. The aliens had learned too late that the beings they had feared were actually their protectors. Now they would never make that mistake again.